I've stumbled across something, this transformer. It's called the Crazy Russian Transformer. Someone else has done a replication and called it the Amazing Transformer. I'm going to call it odd, but I suspect it is largely conventional. What we've got, and I didn't want to pull it apart, but I will. There's a copper rod going right the way through, just a perfectly standard piece of copper rod. Around that, we've got a bunch of poorly fitting ferrite cores. Everyone else's version of this had good fitting ferrite cores, but mine aren't, because that's all I've got. Now, the copper rod is completing a circuit. I've got my power supply here, coming in, going through the copper rod, in other words, connected to one end of the copper rod, and the other side completes the circuit to the collector of my 3055 transistor and back to ground. And then I've got a signal generator. Both of these things are homemade, both the power supply and the signal generator. And I'll tell you why that's important in a second. But the signal generator is obviously powering the transistor at about 20 kilohertz. And then these other wires, all this stuff here, is to measure the output. Obviously this one's going to the scope. One of these crocodile clip leads is going through the cores, but not through the copper. This other one is going through the copper and obviously through the cores as well. So let's complete the circuit by hooking up the crocky clip lead to the other side of this copper. And that's my new microphone. So when I first did this experiment, before I had a little play, I realized that when I turned the frequency up and down, it reached an apex point and just went off. But now we've got a point where it actually allows, I've put an extra ferrite ring on there, and it allows the frequency to go a little higher and produce a bit more power. Every ferrite ring I keep adding increases the power output. And I don't know where that ends, but I'll try the next highest frequency range. And back down again. And it's probably about to burn my transistor rather soon, because what's going through there is too small for my homemade equipment to measure, but we have just under an amp and perhaps 2 volts or so. But the power supply has a few resistors in there which the output goes through so as to be used as a current limiter for the purposes of the power supply circuit. So basically we've got about 18.5 miles of wire in both the signal generator and the power supply, along with a few resistors. And the power in the transformer is being dissipated by a thin, by a copper pipe. So we've got about 1/1000th of the resistance in this circuit is actually in the transformer itself. So that leaves me quite interested, and I want to dig a little further. But for now, that will do, but I'll show you the scope shot. That's the output. And the duty cycle is not that low. I'm going to swing the duty cycle up and down a bit on my homemade and modified. And as I move the duty cycle backs and forwards, that's what we get. And I'm going to do the same thing pointing at the LEDs. That's from lowest to middle to high. So before, when I did this, when I put the duty cycle on max like that, the whole thing just cut out. So there's quite a few phenomena to explore here. I'll try and do that and come back and tell you what works best. For the time being, have a good night.